Morning, everyone. Welcome to Talking Horses. Paul Verderosa and Andy Serlings. We're back in action. We had a couple of weather-related cancellations. We've been mostly fortunate with the weather. It was only the second and third cancellations all winter. You always figure you're going to get more, but we're glad to be back in action this week, and we're glad the temperatures are going to start getting a little higher because it's been a rough week.
Yeah, looking ahead, we're going to be in the 40s, maybe crack 50 at some point. Spring's going to spring soon, so that'd be nice. Very nice.
There you have it. All right, head over to NYRA Bets. All sorts of important information being imparted today already on Talking Horses. Bonus 200, use the promo code bonus 200 and we'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. Check out track stats when you're at NYRA Bets as well. We also have a cross-country pick 5, 3 at Tampa, 2 at Aqueduct. Those races will be shown on America's Day at the Races from 2 to 5 today, 2 to 4:30 on FS2, 4:30 to 5 on FS1. Race number 1. Well, we'll start out by showing the Linda Rice horses running second and third, Shoplifting and Cheryl's Delight. And I can't speak for you, Paul, but I've just about seen enough of these horses, and they, particularly Shoplifting, I guess either one could win, but my God, this feels like they've had so many chances.
I know, and, you know, in Shoplifting's case, I think she's going to end up being a better mommy with that pedigree than a racehorse, to be honest. But I know that Linda wants to get
I would imagine that she
Yeah.
would probably be retired soon, but I mean, whether winning a race or not is going to really matter. That Miss Shop family is a very, very they're an expensive family, but she's just had so many chances, and she can win, but.
Yeah, and I mean, even Cheryl's Delight, too. I mean, look at Cheryl. I mean,
she's a hanger extraordinaire.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to argue, maybe she needed this, but she still hangs anyway, and she doesn't put away any fields, and that's putting it lightly. So, I don't know. I just went for another option, as did you, in this spot. So, mutually exclusive for me, a first-time starter for Chad Brown. You take a look at the pedigree, too. I know that, you know, the second dam did her best work going long, but there has been 3 winners from 4 foals on the dam side of it. And
well, it's a 7-furlong race.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's more distance is probably fine.
Probably a better thing, too. And it was funny, too. I found it a really, like, nuancy, kind of interesting stat for Chad Brown. He's 4 for 11 with 9 in the money, $1.97 ROI with first-time starters, 4-year-olds and up, sprinting on the dirt, only at Aqueduct in the last 5 years. But what's funny about that stat is he started off 0 for 4. So his last 7 that he sent out, he had 4 winners in 3 seconds. So these horses usually run well for him, especially lately. So, and looking around with Shoplifting and Cheryl's Delight, I just wanted a new face and a first-time starter fit that bill.
He had a first-time starter in one day at Aqueduct, going back to maybe 2016 or 17. And at that time, with 4-year-old and up first-time starters in dirt sprints, he was either 0 for 4, I think it was 1 for 16. And I had pointed out on the show and talked about it, and it happened that before the race I was talking to him on the phone, and I said to him, do you know that you're 1 for 16 with 4-year-old and up firsters dirt sprints? And he said to me, I'm about to be 2 for 17. And the horse was actually pattern recognition and eventually won the Cigar Mile.
Okay.
But I always remember saying, well, I'm about to be 2 for 17. And I laughed, and he was right, and he won. Yeah, besides loving the name, I don't know anything about this horse, nor was I interested in asking in a small field about a horse will be a short price. I picked a horse who's a short price now, but it's clearly not going to be a short price by post time, and that's Wimberley. It's just, I didn't want to take a firster. I don't want the Linda Rice horses, and you're basically left with Wimberley, whose one dirt race wasn't that good, but maybe could build on it, switches to Amelia Green, comes here. Just thought might be an interesting new face in here. I wouldn't bet this horse at 9 to 5, but maybe goes up, as you can see, was the sort of outlier morning line odds in this race. So I'm hoping he goes up and take a little shot with him. But yeah, like you, I think a mutually exclusive is sort of a very dangerous first-time starter. Race number 2. We had a scratch in here. I want to start by talking about the number 3, Adelike. Adelike, I'm not really sure. She's been good down at Parks. The question is, for a horse that's going to have speed, and with the scratch of Willful Desire, she is in a position to lead these on a merry chase. If you think she can bring her form from Parks up here, then she's the horse to beat.
I agree. The only question that I have is, and I just don't know about the mile for her. I know she's going to be in front, but is she going to be able to see the mile out? And she was entered here, but I think there was a paperwork issue a couple of weeks ago that kept her.
There was I think it was a horseman's comp.
Oh, okay. So she definitely brings speed and she brings intrigue for sure in the race. And in her last race, I mean, Dazzy came back to win here finally and got that win. And all 4 horses in that race too that have run.
My concern with this horse is that while this horse is showing good form down at Parks, a lot of times trainers that haven't had horses run here and they come here and, it's like they cross the Hudson and their horses just don't seem to run as well. And that was one of my biggest concerns. I'm not going to be shocked if this horse wins. Not exactly meeting a field of killers in this race, and with the Scratch of Willful Desire, she may have these horses at her mercy.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to definitely be in front. It's just a question of the mile and a question of if she brings her form here.
And for those that are wondering, Kendrick Carmouche is riding the first couple races here and taking off. He's heading down to New Orleans. His grandmother passed away, and so our condolences, of course, to Kendrick, but and his family as well, but also why he's leaving after the second. We hope to have him back soon. I don't know whether he's coming back Sunday or not. I believe there's services tomorrow, but I'm not exactly sure on that. But of course, once again, condolences to Kendrick and his family on the loss of his grandmother. You have gone to the 6 Goldcrest.
Yeah, I think Goldcrest kind of needed that start last time out and chased Willful Desire around the track for quite a while. And it's a good sign, too, that we're finally seeing some back-to-back races from this horse without being offered for a tag as well. So it was wider last time at a moderate pace and should appreciate the added distance, too, going the mile, I think, in here, and is probably a horse that'll be able to, well, it's obviously going to sit off of the 3, obviously, with 3 being probably lone speed in here. But I just think based on the last effort and now getting to stretch back out to the mile, this horse
Well, I don't think she's faster than Floge, but yeah, I mean, she's probably stalking somewhere a couple lengths off the lead. She's a very logical horse, I agree. Probably need the last race. I took Whistler Style, who's dropping down. Interestingly enough, in the starter optional, she's the only one running for a tag, and that tag she's running for is 20. And, it's sort of a mix bag of whether or not she's dropping in class, but you start to look to these horses, and these are horses that, for the most part, are running at lower levels than she's been running at. So she's been running at better horses. She doesn't have a problem with the distance. I didn't think she'd be that short a price, and while I don't disagree with Goldcrest, I think she's perfectly logical as an alternative, I didn't want to take her what's going to be a short price now with the scratch, and I was hoping Whistler Style, maybe she's a horse that's just been facing tougher horses and will handle the mile. I didn't have a good feel for this race, but I just went in that direction with Whistler Style.
Yeah, and you know what? She got wired in her last 2 starts, too, so maybe a little fairer today, something to chase at.
Well, I mean, she's going to have to maybe get wired here because with the scratch of the 4, the pace scenario is a lot different than it was beforehand. Race number 3 going 6.5 furlongs, and we'll start by showing the replay of the Logical America's Honor, I think is even money on the line 2 races back. And I guess the real question with this horse is bad race, 3.5-month layoff, and now a big drop down.
Yeah,
that's the problem with this horse at a short price, but obviously has 2 races that are just better than these horses.
Yeah, just completely better, and maybe the horse didn't want the mile, but the problem with that is, and I know I picked this horse on top just based on the fact that this horse just run better sprint races than the other horses in here, is that he backed out too quick last time for me going a mile. So maybe something was amiss, and then they did end up laying the horse off. I think
now they drop him.
Yeah, now they drop him. See, and that's the other problem.
And he's got a bar shoe on, too.
Yeah, I know. And
are they trying to dissuade people from claiming him? I don't know.
It's possible. I mean, we'll see what he does here. I know he was wide in those 2 starts prior to that. He's just run the best race. If he comes back well, he's probably supposed to win this race. I guess it's just a question of whether or not he's going to do it with everything thrown in front of him.
He runs a buyer in the low 60s. He's probably less than even money to win this race, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I can understand it. I just didn't want to pick him. And the question is, where else do you go if you don't pick him? Well, I guess you could take the Jimmy Ryerson firster on the rail that Jose Lezcano is going to ride with Kendrick leaving. Nico's Derby run is sort of a logical, and I wanted to show his first start. And it's sort of a misleading chart call because this was the Super Gold rail day, and this horse came up the rail for the running, will angle out into the 2-path or so, maybe 3-path here very briefly, but it spends a very brief period. This was also a race that completely collapsed from a fast pace, and then he's a lugging horse, and he ducks into the rail again. So the reality of this horse is, he definitely broke a length and a half slow. That is absolutely accurate. But in a fast-paced race that collapses, that becomes less important. And he's a horse that spent, I don't know, 85% or more of the race right down on the good rail. So, and then you see him come back in his next start. And obviously they ran him over his head in his next start. Having said that, he didn't run a step in there. Now, he's going to cut back to 6.5 furlongs. Maybe that's going to help him out, and he certainly can win this race. But I have some question marks about that race that looks good because of the way the horse was on a gold rail.
I agree with you 100%, and it was the only race that day that actually collapsed with that pace, and he was inside. And I just feel like looking at that, yes, the cutback will help him, but I don't know how good he really is based on that race. He could very well be a decent horse.
He can win this race.
Yeah, sure.
And neither one of us are going to say he can't win this race.
No, I would be surprised.
But I'm not sure how good he is. And I'll tell you something else. I don't see how he's a bigger price than Broderick. Why is anybody going to put Broderick in here?
Yeah, I have the horse second in here, and it was kind of just a cop-out being second. And, I mean, Two Bag made that move but just couldn't get to the winner. But still, I mean, and last time was on the wrong lead in the stretch and drifting and just didn't look good at all in that second-place effort. And the races aren't particularly fast. I mean, if he wins this race, that means a couple of horses don't have to show up. And I don't know if they're not going to show up because I don't think he's that much horse.
I went to Laird of Magnolia, who's taking a significant drop and won't be a short price, nor should he be.
Yeah.
His first race is good enough to win this race. He ran against Killers. A lot of people like Sovereignty. As a Derby-type horse, Prater's a horse that I think is supposed to come back soon. If everything goes all right, he's supposed to come back in early March.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to go more than a mile, but we'll see. He's a Curlin. We'll see. Obviously, things sort of went the wrong way. But Antonio Arriaga's horses have been really, really running. And he didn't have this horse that long before the last race. He was in against a field of horses he couldn't compete with. Yeah. And I kind of wanted to give him one chance because I'm grasping at straws. I didn't want to take the firster. I'm not taking Nico's Derby Run, who I think is going to be second choice. And I didn't want to take a short price in the 2. So I've not really left many options. And his first race was good enough, and Arriaga's horses have been running. So
yeah, I have him third in here, too. I thought he was the logical drop-down horse.
5-horse field.
Yeah.
Race number 4. We'll take a break after race number 4. And this race was absolutely crushed by scratches. Don't know who you liked or didn't like.
I lost my top
But it's hard to imagine that the 1 and 4 weren't somewhere in your play. I had them second and actually 5th. So didn't affect me as much. I didn't really want either of them. And their scratching actually makes me want to play the race left because they're going to be short prices in here. Let's take a look at the horse you have on top. 2 races back, Brown Don't Stop. And to be honest with you, this horse runs back to this race at 1 1/8 miles. He's probably the horse to beat.
He might actually win this race. I know that field, when you look at it with Jansen and York Tavern, isn't the
Who are the killers in here?
Horses. Yeah, but there's nobody left in here that you're really scared of. And honestly, to answer your earlier question, I lost my first and second choice in here because I picked it 4-1 originally. So now what I have left is really Brown Don't Stop, who's probably going to be forward off of Solo Empire in here. And I figured Solo Empire probably doesn't want any part of the dirt. It seems like even with a drop. And
isn't Big Rich going to be forward coming out? I would
think
so.
I would think so as well. So I just thought maybe Brown Don't Stop falls into the trip 2 back and just gets the job done in here.
Well, I don't know what the trip they fall into. The question is whether he's good enough. I don't think that a trip is going to necessarily get him beat.
I think he's good enough. The
winner's
for
circle,
sure.
he's good enough to win.
He wins the last 2 for sure.
He's running faster figures.
Yeah.
He's running them at 1 1/8 miles. He seems like a very, very logical horse in here, and he's probably going to be about 6 to 5, and he probably should be. I mean, there's just not much for him.
No.
I think he and Big Rich are going to take the bulk of the play, and my horse will now be the 3rd choice with the scratches, and obviously nowhere near that price, which makes him less interesting. My general feeling with Ollie Can Dance is this horse has been running figures that are fast enough in the back. Obviously didn't run very well last time, but did break slowly, going 7 furlongs, and it was a race where Aliyah just sort of ran off from the field.
Yeah.
And I know it's the same level, but they were a lot better horses than he's running against today. And I feel like with Ruben Silvera, even though this horse doesn't seem to have any speed, I feel like Ruben's going to find a way to get the horse more in the race. And in what's a tiny field now, they never, ever gap out.
Yeah,
so I just thought getting Ruben might just be a little more aggressive. He can get back to some of those Finger Lakes figs, and that's always a big if because don't know if he runs them out there. But I didn't want to take Brown Don't Stop at a short price in here. I was going to pick him on top, but I ended up putting the 7 over the 3. Just to take a little bit of a price.
Yeah, I mean, he's his own worst enemy, but I actually wrote down if he was going to get out of the gate, it was going to be today with Ruben Silvera. And Alea just wired that field and was facing so much better horses prior to that, just bottomed out that field, so really had no shot last time anyway.
I worry less about the slow pokes in small fields because they always seem to end up bunching up pretty much, and pace ends up being often less of a concern than it is in a bigger field.
Yeah.
See what happens. That's the first 4. Late pick 4 after a quick break.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With NYRA Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with NYRA Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NYRABets.com.
Well, welcome back to Talking Horses. Paul Verderosa and Andy Surley. And Paul, we got a race in race number 5, which doesn't have any scratches.
Shocking
so that's a
today.
good thing.
Yeah.
And I think the conversation has to start with the horse you have second, and I have third, Z-Bear, who's probably going to be favored. But I tell you something, this is some dump job by Linda Rice.
Yeah, this just feels like one of those Linda Rice specials, right, where the horse ran exceptionally well at times and then kind of tailed off a little bit. And I know had that bad break 2 starts back and was wide last time, but obviously now has been away. And it's one of those horses, too, where sometimes you'll see Linda bring them back either if there's a condition for a waiver or even try them in a starter or something. Nothing here, just going for 16 like I'm done. And if there's a line of people that want them, have at it at 6 now. So I don't know. On better days, this horse can win this race without a doubt. Do I trust this horse? Absolutely not on this drop.
I can't disagree with a single thing you said. I agree. I mean, it's just not the kind of horse that I want to bet on or I want to pick in these races. If I had some clever ideas at prices, I wouldn't let this horse ever beat me in a pick 3 because he's got the right field to run at.
Yeah.
You've got the number 3 Perfect Flight on top.
When you look at
As
this,
do I.
Yeah, even if you go back to the last 2 starts, got off slow 2 starts back, ended up being wide in that spot. Last time out, had that stumble at the break. Still ended up running second, a decent enough effort.
Problem is that figure is too high.
Yeah, doesn't it feel that way when you go back and you look at the other horses?
It does.
And the winner got a nice rail ride in there, but that's why I kind of feel like it ended up being a little high because of the trip the winner pulled in there. But it's funny when you look at this horse because in a spot like this, if you don't trust Z-Bar, I think this is probably the next most trusting horse.
Yeah,
in here.
no,
horse come a long way though from being in the Zia Park Derby win that this horse had a few years back.
And I think Lolita's horses, when they look like they're logical in spots, they often
they
show
often
up.
run.
I don't have any problem. Aaliyah will take a look at the race. We mentioned that earlier. And you know what? I'm not going to be absolutely shocked if Aaliyah comes back and wins this race. But I just feel like from a pace scenario with When Love Takes Over inside of her, and Matty Oliver is not a rider that's afraid to send their horses in races. It's a very different story. And while, yes, he could win back in here, he has such a last time was the time feel.
100%, especially against that field with horses like York Tavern in there and Mr. Mendelssohn who just don't win.
Not a good bunch.
Yeah, and I mean, Christopher Elliott took no prisoners and just went and opened up on the field.
It's like it looked like a runoff, but it was the right move.
No, it was the right move in there in retrospect. So, but in this spot with a couple of other speeds and maybe a little bit tougher group than last time. I mean, not substantially tougher, but just a little bit tougher. I don't trust this.
This is a much tougher potentially group than last time. Those were not very. And I looked up off a win in dirt sprints. Michelle Nevin 7 for 43, 16%, $1.47 ROI, and a shortest price. Didn't do a lot. Now her other horse, Pineapple Man, is obviously a dangerous horse in this race, but man, he's awfully suspect. Claimed. Layoff, drop down, no interest in the waiver. Now, some might think, I was talking about this with David Aragona yesterday, talking about he thinks that sometimes not running with a waiver off the layoff like this is a better sign, and maybe he's right. And listen, the horse did get involved in the pace and was running against better horses, but I don't trust this horse. I didn't trust the trajectory of this horse before the layoff. The best thing I would say this horse has going for him is Michelle.
Yeah, especially based on the last 3 starts and even the start 2 starts back in the bud. Like, it thought it gave you some promise, but he was bad.
He ran okay, 2 back.
Yeah,
but
he was bad. Then after that, even. And the pace wasn't all that fast that time. I don't know. I don't trust him. I have him third in here just because at the end of the day, beyond the 3 and the 2.
Well, I like the 5 more than you do. I think Aaliyah is dangerous in here, and I basically took what I thought were the 2 logical horses if you're betting against the 2 layoff horses. I see David I see you looking at 5-1 in here. Boy, I didn't like this horse off the recent form at all.
No, and when you look at this race, the
last
last
back races that are good enough.
Yeah, he does have some that are on his card, but I just don't like that when last time out he was in a good spot too, and when he was just empty when he got popped. He got popped left-handed, and he just stopped. Like, he didn't do any running whatsoever, and now it's hard to want him coming back in just a week and a half in that spot.
Race number 6 was changed dramatically by scratches, not necessarily because major contenders scratched, but with them scratching, it really does change the dynamic of the race. And it makes a horse that I don't particularly love, Abaddon, I think, much more dangerous. And I also think it helps the 7 Dot Stoller, who may find himself sitting off of a fairly moderate, uncontested pace in here. So I think both of those horses, their chances move up significantly with the scratches in here. But it's another situation where we're dealing with layoff horses in here on the first two choices, starting with Amundsen. And we'll show Amundsen winning at Saratoga. If Amundsen runs these races, he's going to destroy this field. But, man, I don't trust him. I respect Toscano's. It's not anything about that. It's more about a horse that was in raging form that's disappeared now for 7 months.
Yeah, and it's funny because in that whole process, there was a couple of voided claims as well, and he still just kept on running and running well, regardless of whatever the voids were for. And it's funny, too, because he sort of became a horse, too, that it seemed like even though he was just off the pace when he made the lead earlier, he got better in some of these races and ran faster figures, too. So, listen, if he comes back, and he's run well off the voids before, if he comes back and runs well again, he might have this field over a barrel based on his figures prior.
He's the horse to beat.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody said, and he doesn't have to be slow. He can be more forward. I just don't want to take him off of the layoff. And the same could be said for Tetsu, who I do agree shows up for Rick Dutrow, but you have a horse that Rick claimed over 10 months ago and finally comes back for the races. Now, it's important to note that both Amundsen and Tetsu are running for the waiver.
Correct.
But is that good or bad?
In this spot, I don't know. And, you know, it's funny because they're both 9 years old. So, really, I mean, I would think probably the 4 would be more apt to be claimed than Tetsu in this spot. But, and listen, in that last race before this layoff, Tetsu got a really good setup in a small field and got the job done in there. And I have him second in here just because, and I didn't really switch my picks around after the scratches, but I don't know. I don't trust either one of them, but either one of them could probably win in this spot.
Talk about the number 6 in here. We both have on top Mr. JT.
Drops back to the level of the claim 2 starts back. Last time got wired by Chuck Willis, who was on the inside part of the track. He was chasing wide against the bias that day, and he got that trip 2 back. That was the right trip finally to get him that win. Bruce Levine has had it before. He's run well with him. He knows where to spot him, puts him back in for the 25 today. And if there's any pace up front, he's in the right spot today to close into it based on the being wide last time as well and against better competition.
For my money, he was against the track last time, which makes him look worse than he is, and he was just a logical alternative, but I didn't want to take the layoff horses. I like him and Dot's Dollar. They're going to be my 2 main plays in this race. Race number 7. We'll start race number 7 by talking about Victory Way on the outside, and we'll look at him 2 races back. I like the cut back in distance. He seemed to run well when he cut back last time out.
I do too. I think doing the mile and the mile and the 16 just doesn't really suit him with his style. He's more better at 7 furlongs, and maybe the 6.5 will suit him well than it did. So now maybe the 6 will do it too. And he's just always kept solid company. He's just run against so many good fields in here, and last time out he was on that up near that pace that collapsed going the mile, and now he gets to cut back today and just set up shop on the outside today. It's just a logical horse at a right spot.
I'm a little afraid he's going to end up a huge favorite here. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that they're going to look at Toxic Gray and say, oh, he's kind of dropped off. He's run 2 lousy races, and while Victory Way didn't run as well last time, was going a mile on top of the pace. Now he cuts back. He's got the huge figure 2 back, and I do think he's the horse to beat. I don't disagree, but the more I look, the more I thought there's a possibility he ends up being that he and Toxic Gray separate themselves. And if that happens, I want Toxic Gray because he is going to be loose. And Kendrick was going to ride him. Now it's Romero Mirage who's going to send him.
It's the same,
Last time he got in that chase situation with King Angelo, ran so well. The time before that in the slop, he was facing better horses. And I think if he gets clear on the lead, he might just be better than these. And I was kind of hoping that he'd be the better price today over the 6, and that's why I took him. I think they are obviously the 2 main horses in here.
Yeah, I have the horse second in here for all the reasons you said. Ridgewood Runner came back to win 2 out of the last start, and even 2 starts back, he was in a much tougher spot in the Gravesend, and last time out, he was in that chase mode against a good horse.
What about Crazy Mason? We'll show his last race. I mean, what do you do with a horse that severely beat a bias last time out? I know he came up the rail, but this was a speed track, and he was able to make this huge run from dead last to get it done. I'm a little scared of him. I just feel like it's a different pace scenario and a tougher field.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to get the pace that he needs in this spot. Funny, a Greg Sacco horse I didn't put on top in there, but he definitely got the good setup last time. And when you look back even at the race, too, see, the thing is, too, horses that have come out of that race have done okay because Radio Red came back with a 94 figure and 1 Shipsational, and Beaver State ran second back as well out of those races. So It's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I just think he's up against it from a pace standpoint.
So do I.
Today, and that's why I have him third.
And the horse he has to beat, particularly the 5, has a big advantage.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just discount. I'll tell you something. I don't think the 1's impossible in this race. The 1's race 3 back was good, and last time out, they all just got run off their feet by Top Gunner. Now, I think he's a cut below these, but I actually think he's going to run okay. I just don't know if okay is going to be good enough in this race because the 2 main choices, and even Crazy Mason, they're pretty good.
Yeah, no, and technically, in a weird way, it's a little bit of a drop for this horse anyway into the 62 5s instead of the 80. So we'll see.
All right, the last race, one of the more interesting races on the day, but it does have a lot of firsters. We'll take a look at the number 9, who we both have third, Grand Cash. I thought this horse ran pretty well last time out. I'm not against this horse.
No, not at all. And, you know, when you kind of take a look at this race, he got a little bit bothered in the stretch, too, as well, when Dr. Chairman came out and kind of bothered him a little bit. So the winner was a Christophe Förster that ran well in there. So, listen, he put up a 63 figure. I mean, the only reason why he probably, if he was with any other connections, he would be a much lower price, I'm sure. Second time out with any improvement in here. I thought he ran well. He stayed on okay. You know, we'll see what we get out of him today in his second start because from an outside draw, he could be forward. I mean, not up on the pace, but he could be out there and run a good race in this spot.
He ran well enough that he can win in here, but there are some dangerous-looking firsters. But you've gone to the 2 Total Silence, who is too slow on paper and has had chances. What am I missing?
You know, I felt like he was kind of, I know he looks slow, but he kind of was headed in the right direction, at least from a figure standpoint. And last time out, he ran into 2 horses that just ran this field off their feet because they were the 2 best horses in the race. So, I don't know. He has potential to be forward in a spot where we don't know really where the pace is going to come from with the first-time starter.
You think he has potential to be forward?
I think he's going to be no worse than third in this spot. He might be able to pocket up.
Well, hang on. You've got 18 firsters, and you're.
Well, I'm just saying I don't know what the
firsters
firsters are going to do. I said, but just based on what we've, you know, you don't know how the firsters are going to come out of there running. But I think he's got potential to be forward in a spot in here.
He's going awfully slow if he's in front, but maybe that happens. You could be right. If the horses have run, he's as fast as any of them, I suppose. Okay. I mean, I've got him 4th. Gargan won a couple races recently, which I think is interesting. I went more towards firsters in here. I mean, the obvious firster is the number 7, Recurring Revenue, a first-time starter for Chad Brown and Klarovich. There's a complexity. The second dam was pretty good. The dam herself was nothing, and her production hasn't been very good. But this is obviously a dangerous firster, bookending firsters for these connections.
Yeah, they go. The second dam was Hansel's girl?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think one longer on the dirt. But
yes, it was a router.
Yeah.
Well, this is 7 furlongs.
7 furlongs, so it should be fine. Yeah.
I think the Brad Cox will probably take a lot of money. The 4 Tiote, I'm not sure you pronounce it. There isn't a lot of production in this. I don't know. Calumet, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
You're a little skeptical on the whole deal, yeah. So
take money for that barn. I just guessed with the 6, Mo for the King over the 7. David Duggan's been pretty live. And this one from a dam side was okay. It's a little more turfy, but got a couple of foals that ran the 70s, one that ran the 80s. So from a reduction standpoint, this looked like the best one to me for a trainer who's been very dangerous. A little colder lately, but it's got some okay work. So I just figured a bigger price, I'd guess, with this one.
It's funny, too, when you look at this horse because, as you said, turfy and longer, but you look at the siblings, and they've all sprinted well. They've run well on dirt sprinting. So it's kind of funny from a pedigree standpoint. But, yeah, this horse, I had a little bit of trouble with this race, and I just took a horse that has run already, that's ran faster than some of the other horses. Do you know what his
sire, King for a Day's claim to fame is as a racehorse?
King for a Day,
He was the first horse to beat Maximum Security.
Okay.
All right. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are done. Thank you for watching. Head over to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member of NYRA Bets, no better time than the present. Use the promo code BONUS200, and we will match the $200 of your initial deposit.